Hi everyone, today we're here with Jennifer from Sunny Title, and we're going to be discussing post-occupancy. Thank you, Jennifer, for meeting with us today.
My pleasure. So tell me, what's your first question?
So our first question is, what is post-occupancy?
So a post-occupancy is when a buyer and seller agree that the seller is going to reside in the property after closing.
Okay, and then we also want to know, what are the terms of the post-occupancy agreement?
So the great thing about the post-occupancy agreement is that whatever terms the buyers and sellers agree, there is no one set agreement where everybody's going to agree on the same thing. It really depends on what the buyer wants and what the seller wants, and that's why you have professional agents that are knowledgeable and there to assist you on coming up with what those terms are, what your wants and needs are, what are like deal breakers, what needs to happen. So all that is written up in an agreement.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Jennifer. So one of the questions we got is, who is responsible for utilities and maintenance during the post-occupancy period?
So typically during the post-occupancy agreement, the seller is still required to pay the utilities and maintain the property per the contract. So again, this is all written up in the agreement so that there is no misunderstandings and the seller is aware that they're responsible for maintaining the property and continuing to pay for the utilities.
Jennifer, so what happens if there are delays in occupancy, meaning the seller stays past the agreed agreement?
Okay, so that's actually a really good question, and one that a lot of times the buyers have because they're concerned. I'm going to closing, I'm going to close. What happens if the seller doesn't move out? Well, that again is the reason why we have a post-occupancy agreement made where both parties are agreeing to what the terms are. One of those terms is seller needs to, vacate the property by X date, and if the seller doesn't, then this happens. Typically, what is this? It's a security deposit that's held from the seller's proceeds. That can be $5,000, that can be $10,000, where if the seller does not leave by the time that they're required to leave per the agreement, then that money goes over to the buyer. So it kind of motivates the seller to move out. Of course, money's the motive. So if you're telling me I'm gonna lose $5,000, trust me, I'm gonna move. So that's usually how that's handled.
Thank you. And then what conditions should the property be left in once the seller vacates the property?
So it should be the same thing as any regular transaction where it's broom swept. It has to be vacated completely empty, and it has to be clean just the same way it would be if you were closing on the transaction and moving in the day of closing.
Okay, and for our last question is, when can the buyer move in after the seller vacates?
So basically, I've seen where buyers typically, they do their final walkthrough, they make sure that the property is vacated, the seller's there, and they've got the moving truck outside ready to move their stuff in. So immediately after the occupancy period is over and they do the final walkthrough, the buyer can move right in.
Perfect. Again, Jennifer, thank you so much for meeting with us today. This was very valuable information. And if any of you have any additional questions, please message us and we'll be glad to answer any questions you may have. Bye.
Bye.